Today we're going to discuss about the coming of the Dajjal. Now we've got this time right now, from now till the day of judgment. We don't know how long it is, but all the major signs are about to come. The minor signs have gone by. Many of the minor signs, in fact, they say that there's probably one or two minor signs left. Like the whole of the river Euphrates is going to dry up and there's going to be a mountain of gold. It's going to leave a mountain of gold behind. Whether that's literal or metaphor, it's a metaphor, we don't know, but that's one of the signs still left as a minor sign. And another one is Imam Mahdi, the coming of Imam Mahdi. Now, the thing is that Imam Mahdi, I know there's a lot of people that will discuss about Imam Mahdi. Is he born? Is he out yet? Is he around? The thing is, nobody knows. And if anyone gives you ever a timeline of this is the date when this is going to happen or that is going to happen, forget it. That's not going to be the case, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam hasn't given us actual dates. What he did do, though, he gave in certain ahadith, he gave when this happens, then that's going to happen, or when this happens, then that will happen. Or generally, we understand from the ahadith that certain things will come after other things. So one of the things that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us is that the minor signs are going to take place first before the major signs, and the bridge between the minor signs and the major signs is Imam Mahdi. So for if Imam Mahdi doesn't come, or the true Imam Mahdi, there's going to be a lot of false Imam Mahdis around. There are people out there who claim to be Imam Mahdi, and you've got to stay away from them. Just like, look, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he talked about the black flags, right, coming from the east. Again, there's going to be many black flags. There's going to be many false ones. There's going to be a lot of false people trying to claim that they are that army that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam talked about. But yet, you know what? We don't know until the real signs are there. So, what are the real signs that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke about? You've got to look deep in the ahadith, and you've got to see across the whole spectrum of what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. Because there's no point of you taking one particular hadith and saying that's it. This is it. This is all happening right now. You can't do that. I mean, there are speakers out there who have spoken about already coming of Ya'juj, Ma'juj, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't really make sense, because the Prophet ﷺ actually spoke about the fitna of Ya'juj, Ma'juj coming after Dajjal has gone, and while Isa alayhi salam is here. That's when the fitna of Ya'juj, Ma'juj happens. Okay. So anyway, look, let's not go into a deep debate about the Ya'juj, Ma'juj and when what's coming. We're here to discuss about the coming of Dajjal. Now, there's a Dajjalic system that takes place for Dajjal. So this also now, this now tells us that yes, some people have said that there's only a Dajjalic system, and some people have said there's only Dajjal. But the truth is, there's a Dajjalic system that takes place beforehand, and then the arrival of Dajjal happens. So the system itself, yes, we're living through it. There are a lot of things that are happening right now in the world that might be part of the system. Now, again, some of our young brothers and sisters, they get lost in this whole Illuminati thing, this whole, oh my God, Dajjal, this sign, that sign. I've seen this one eye thing here, there. Look, just please take a break, all right? One of the things not to do is to connect all the things that are not so clear cut. Now, we have one thing in Islam which is absolute clear cut, and something which is conjecture, right? You got to know the difference between the two. Even in logical thinking, whether it's critical thinking, whether it's philosophical thinking, whatever it is, something is known for certain and something is conjecture. Okay, now be very careful when you make that jump, right? So let me give you a quick idea of this. So something which is actually certain could be this. Look, that, okay, you saw this sign, you saw this one eye, you saw this pyramid with an eye on it. Okay, that's that, right? But then when you move beyond that, okay, you might say, okay, this is part of the Illuminati or something. Okay, fine. I'll accept that this sign is attributed to the Illuminati. That's still somewhat okay on concrete level. However, for you then to make a jump and say the Illuminati are, or this secret organization, or that media corporation, or this thing, or that organization, and all these governments, and they're all working together for this one big thing that's about to happen, That's now conjecture. For you to connect all those connections and say, this corporation, this many corporations, this and a country or these countries and these signs, they all mean, and the whole music industry and this, they're all coming to this one big organization. Look, you've now gone into the area of conjecture. For you to say how big a secret organization is, again, you've gone into an area that has got a lot of conjecture. It's got guesstimate work going on. You're guessing, you're speculating, you're making guesses. And please don't make this mistake. I've seen this mistake happen again and again with our young brothers and sisters. Even there's people in their 20s, 30s, 40s who are caught up with this and thinking, yeah, I know the science of sin. Look, get your concrete facts in one area, and everything else which is conjecture, just say to yourself that, you know what, I'll just keep that at distance. May not be true, right? And the possibility of it being true, those conjectures being true, is going to be relatively low. You don't know what you're actually stating as a fact, because facts are concrete. We have the same thing in Islam. Okay, we have the same thing in Islam. The Quran and Sunnah, there are certain things that are absolute facts. So, for example, look, the Prophet ﷺ spoke about the tall buildings happening, right? The Arabs or the people who were yesterday looking after sheep or flocks of sheep or maybe herds of camels and so on. Those people tomorrow, suddenly they start to compete with each other building the tall buildings. Now we've got that hadith there, fine, right? We're living that time right now. We know that in the skyscrapers going across the Arab lands and so on, especially the UAE and so on, is something phenomenal. Okay, we know that. But then for you to jump into like saying that, okay, this is the time when, for example, when the Prophet ﷺ said about Dajjal that his first day is going to be, what is said as a fact, okay, is that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that Dajjal's rule on the earth, his first day is going to be like a year, his second day is going to be like a month, his third day is going to be like a week, and the rest of them are like the rest of the days. For you to jump from that and start saying, oh, this is like the dollar and the pound and the yen or the shekel or whatever, pound, dollar, shekel, whatever you say, when you jump to that, now you've made a super jump to conjecture. Can you see what I'm saying? Okay, now I want all the youngsters to be very careful of this jump. Now, what the Prophet also mentioned is one thing, right? Yes, it's in front of your eyes about the days of Dajjal. But then for you to then make a theory and jump with a conjecture to something that relates to our time. Okay, so looking at the whole thing about the power of the dollar, the power of the pound, the power of the shekel, the power of the yen, whatever it is, or currency it is, okay, that's a separate phenomenon. Okay, that's a separate thing. But for you to join that with this hadith, that is pure conjecture, right? That is guesstimate, and the possibility of that is very, very low. And I've seen this being made. There are certain speakers on the internet who will speak and make these loose connections. And our youngsters are like all hyped up. Oh my God, yeah, I know. It's all coming. See, I heard that. Yeah, I know the hadith. Yes, you know the hadith. Read the hadith. Tell me where in the hadith it clearly connects with all these things. And if it doesn't, then call it conjecture. Call it speculation. Call it a guess. Call it something which is not fact, not factual. Right? So please wake up. I really get annoyed when we have youngsters, and you get, even mid-aged people, get caught up in this. They get caught up in this, and they kind of feel that, you're the one who's not tuned in with what's going on. We know what's going on. These are all separate things that are going on. Okay, so one of the things, the traps not to fall in, is to give your enemy in your mind a power that they don't have. And I've spoken about this before in other, reminders, which is that if the Illuminati, or if, let's just say, the Dajjalic system that is going on, right, if it has whatever power it is, always remember that Allah is above all of this. Allah gave the allowance for these things to grow to the power they've got. right? Allah gave that. So don't think that they can escape the power of Allah. As a believer, I should know that Allah's power is the greatest of all powers, and nothing can come in between, in between yourself and Allah's power. If Allah's power is there, then that's the most mightiest thing that we believe in. So please don't take these things out of what they're supposed to be believed as. Okay, so wherever they lie as things. And the other thing I want to say is, look, this conspiracy theory kind of thing. Okay, there's no end to conspiracy theories. Okay, we've got all sorts of theories going on, and they always every few years you've got a new conspiracy theory. So be careful with all of this, because yes, some of the part of the conspiracy theories might actually be true, but most of conspiracy theories, they're just theories. They're just a bunch of things that people just made up out of their head, and that's it. They'll just pump it through and say that this is happening right now because we knew this was coming all along because of these little signs that you can find. Look, just cut out all of that. Okay, so now let's talk about Dajjal. Now, Imam Mahdi, for him to come to the earth, we've got certain signs. Now, Imam Mahdi doesn't just pop up like that. We've got certain wars that will happen between the Muslims and those who are in favor, those who are not in favor of the Muslims. Okay, so what will happen in these lands, which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke about as the lands of the Ahlul Rum, the people of Rome, or the Roman Empire at that time, which is literally Europe and America, because Americans are actually an extension of European people. Canada also is an extension of European people because they migrated, they went further across the ocean over there. So in all these lands, what you're going to find is you're going to find a division. Right? Eventually you find this division. And what is that division? Division is that there's going to be part of them that will be in favor of the Muslims and part of them that will not be in favor of the Muslims. And then what happens is they have their wars between them. So Group A, where you've got the Muslims, and with the Muslims you've actually got the sympathizing non-Muslims. They will be categorized as, let's just say they're Group 1. They will fight all those non-Muslims who are not in favor of this first group. And their fights will go on until this first group is victorious. And this is all in hadith. And then what happens one day is that you've got the Muslim that stands up and says, our victory was because of Allah, or the Quran, sorry. And one of the Christians says, no, it's our victory was there because of the cross. And they then fall out with one another and they have a fight between them. This time the Muslims are defeated. Okay. Now there are many years in between this where there's ups and downs of how the Muslims will find their how Muslims will find their stability or not find their stability in these lands. So there's going to be a kind of a rough ride for the Muslims. Eventually what happens is there is a hadith in Abu Dawood which talks about a succession of khulafa. Right? This is a Sahih hadith in Abu Dawood that talks about they've had a succession of khulafa, of different rulers, Islamic rulers, okay, one after the other. And what they now want to know is how do they select the next ruler, right? And they fall out between themselves. They're having some arguments. And one man amongst them, what he does is that he runs away. He says, I'm not. He's potential person who can become the Khalifa. What he does is that he runs away. He goes to فَهُوَ هَارِبٌ إِلَى Makkah. He says that he's going to run away to Makkah al-Mukarramah. When he goes to Makkah, he doesn't want to do with any of this, right? And these potential, people who can be selected as leaders, they say, "Where's that guy gone?" And somebody says he's gone all the way to Makkah. So they go all of them go to Makkah. They say, "Look, we want to give that guy leadership because he's the only one that never wanted the leadership." They go to Makkah, they find him between Rukn Yamani, they find him right in front of the Kaaba between two of the corners. And what they do is they actually force him in a way, not force, but they kind of say, we're not going to accept any other thing, but we want you to become the leader. Just as the Ummah did with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu after the demise of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they said, we're not going to accept anyone else, except for you. So when they do that with this leader, now nobody knows who this is. Nobody knows if this is the real Mahdi or not, right? How do we know? From a separate hadith in Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ speaks about there's many different fronts in Asham, in the greater Syria, and they then come all the way down to Makkah to try and kill this leader and all those who appointed him. When they come to a place called Bayda near Medina Munawwara, this has been mentioned in several ahadith, the whole earth sucks them inside with all their belongings, all their cavalry, all their whatever they might have with them, all their weapons and arsenal and so on. It sucks them inside. When that incident happens, then people know that that person we just gave the bay'ah to is the Imam Mahdi. Okay, so we don't know how many years there is for that to actually happen. It could be years, just years. It could be decades. It could be centuries. Honestly, we don't know. I'll tell you why. Because about 1,000 years ago, approximately 900,000 years ago, when the Tatars came and they came straight down to the Muslim lands. Do you know that the great scholars in Damascus, they closed themselves in the masjid of Damascus and they said, we've read all the signs and this is the time that Imam Mahdi is going to come out. We're just going to wait for him and then we're going to crush the Tatars. Then Imam Mahdi never came. This was about 900 years ago, my friend. So can you see, sometimes you may read signs, you might get them wrong. So we don't know. The whole thing about the Prophet ﷺ is that for us to be, for us to do our actions. The whole point of this whole thing about Dajjal coming out, like, look guys, I can see a lot of comments coming up, right? If you haven't, I want to say this one thing to you, right? A lot of people send comments and they're like the biggest, naysayers and guys who know everything that's going to happen, and they want to say, you don't know what I'm talking about. I've read this, or I've seen these lectures and I know what's going on. Guys, are you even there for Fajr? I just want to say that to you, because a lot of these guys, I'll be very honest with you, they're not there for Fajr. They're not there joining their local Imam for Fajr. And they're waiting for Imam Mahdi. Your local Imam, like let's say, I know we've got the lockdown right now, but when the lockdown is not here, and then you've got the masjids that are open every morning, there's Fajr going on, right? And there's people that can't make it to their local masjid for Fajr. And they're like, yeah, Imam Mahdi, this, Dajjal, this, Illuminati, this, what nonsense are you on? What planet are you on? Because you can't even make it for Fajr to the masjid. So don't give me all these comments that are coming up, or you don't know this, you don't know that. Don't give me none of that, right? If you haven't got your deen intact, if you haven't got your faraid intact, if you haven't got your sunnahs in place, if you haven't got, if you're not practicing it, if you don't even know how to read the Quran with tajweed, a lot of these guys sitting on, honestly, you're wasting, what has shaitan done to you? I feel like saying, waste man right now. You're sitting there all day on your laptop, on your computer, and you're following all these videos, YouTube videos, and you're downloading it all in your brilliant head of yours, right? You're doing all of that. And guess what? You don't even know how to read the Quran with tajweed, which is a fard, an obligation from Allah. Once I met this guy, I was going to say this, right? I met this guy who was talking about the whole, he's going to have the Khilafah coming back, and he's basically active, and he argued with me for about a decade, right? I'm telling you something true, right? For a decade. And then when the whole buzz went out, you know what happened? La ilaha illallah. One day, after all the buzz went, when these guys wake up, I tell you when they wake up. I always had this theory, right? These guys wake up, these conspiracy theorists, and everything, they know everything, and you're the only one who doesn't know anything. You know what happens? They wake up when two things happen. Either they get married and they get a life, or they get a job, right? These two things wake them up, because then they get serious, right? People who got nothing else to do sit there all day and just following all these conspiracy theories and so on and so on. So this, I know this hadith, this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and that's going to happen, right? So that's what actually, that's what happened. So this guy, what happened? You know what happened? After 10 years of being against me in the local area, right? One day he comes up to me and says, Imam, you know what? Can you just check my Surah Fatiha? So I sat there, I said, okay, read your Surah Fatiha. When you read Surah Fatiha, you know what? That Surah Fatiha is, they say, nah, it wasn't happening. That Surah Fatiha was not proper. So I I felt so sorry for this guy. He wasted 10 years of his life after all of this, following all this, how he's going to establish the whole khilaf and so on. He doesn't even know how to read Surah Fatiha properly. His salahs were probably not even done. I mean, if the Khalifa came or if Imam Mahdi came, he'd probably reject this guy. He'd probably say, you don't know how to read the Fatiha, get out of it. I mean, can you imagine, what are these guys doing? Honestly, I don't understand. What are you doing? You're so full of all the ahadith of the end of the last time, right? And you don't even know your basics of your deen. You don't even know how to do something simple, right? So please don't give me none of these comments, right? And telling me I don't know what this sheikh said and that sheikh said. Let's give it a break, all right? Go and learn your Fatiha and go and learn your deen and go and join the Imam for Fajr and so on and go do some basic things. I know some of these guys, they don't even look after their parents. And they have got no consideration for the parents because the parents don't believe in their theories. So that means the parents are misguided. So, I mean, what are you talking about? Seriously. I mean, you wouldn't even be speaking there if it wasn't for your parents. Anyway, when Imam Mahdi finally comes about, he's going to take the armies with him. He's going to join all the Muslims. He's going to defeat this group that arose against the Muslims. And then he brings a lot of peace on the earth. This peace lasts for a good few years, right? We don't know how long, a few years it lasts. And then he keeps on hearing that Dajjal has come out, right? So he actually goes around he goes around like what's described maybe 2 continents. He goes around Asia, he goes around Europe. These are some of the places and some of the countries I mentioned. These are in these areas. He brings a lot of stability and eventually Dajjal comes out. Now, when Dajjal comes out, okay, Dajjal is going to come out with a lot of fitna. He's going to come with a lot of fitna. So let me give you some of the descriptions that I mentioned about Dajjal. So we know about his eye. Now there's ikhtilaf in which eye it is that he doesn't see from. But you know what? Remember this, that he's got 2 outlets, right? 2 outlets of eyes. One is completely blind, and from one he sees, but it's also defective. That's the way to know Dajjal. He'll have a wide forehead. He'll have Kaf, Fa, Ra written on his forehead. And whether you're literate or not literate, you'll be able to read this. He'll be short but well built, and he's actually in stature. He might be a little bit short, but he's massive, meaning that there's a width to Dajjal, right? So he's actually tall, but when you look at him, he looks short. Why? Because his width is quite big. You know, when you see certain people that they're big this way, they don't look that tall, even though they are tall. So that's the kind of description about Dajjal. He'll have fair skin with a reddish sort of complexion. He'll have a kind of a slight hunchback to him. He will have no children. He will not get married. He was born to Jewish parents, according to our tradition. He was born to Jewish parents. After 30 years, their first and one and only child is this child that gets born. Now, there's a number of fitna that he comes around with. Now, I don't know if people are ready for this, right? You see today, people can't make a choice of a simple, okay, this is where I'm going, this is where I'm not going, right? It's very clear. Quran says do this. You know, people can't give up girlfriends. People can't give up drugs. People can't give up their bad habits. And you telling me, right, in a time where people can't even get off their phone, people can't stop watching these tens and hundreds of videos on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, and Snapchat, and whatever else it is. People can't stop that. They can't stop it. People can't stop. They're hooked onto PlayStation 4. They're hooked onto Xbox One. Okay, they're hooked onto so many things that are just drawing. How many people have you got addicted to these things? And are you telling me that when they see a man coming with real fire that looks like fire, and he comes with a garden, or in another narration he says water, and he tells people to jump into the garden or the water, and Rasulullah ﷺ said, when you see him come, this is Dajjal coming, when you see that coming, he told us ﷺ to jump into the fire. So you've got to go against everything. You're feeling the heat here, and it looks like real fire, it feels like real fire, but you know what? The Prophet ﷺ said, jump into that, because his fire is water and his water is fire. Or his fire is the garden is the fire. Wow, I mean, I can't see, except for the pure believers of our time, doing this. Dajjal's going to come with some serious fitna. Okay, he's going to come with serious fitna, and when he comes, it's not a small thing. I mean, look, some people get really excited that I'll be able to do this with. Look, you ain't doing nothing with Dajjal. No man, no woman. I don't care how many press-ups you do and how many, I don't know, bench presses you do in the gym. Okay, there's no way you're taking on Dajjal. In fact, the only thing you can do with Dajjal is to run or hide. That's the only thing you can do. It's clear in the hadith. Only Isa ibn Maryam is able to take on Dajjal. Not even Imam Mahdi can take on Dajjal. He's the biggest fitna that this world has ever seen. He's going to dominate the entire world in one go. But when he does that, the true believers will be safe. One of the things to be safe, from Dajjal is to keep your Surah Kahf. Okay, now memorize the first 10 verses of Surah Kahf, or memorize the last 10 verses of Surah Kahf, or recite the first 10 verses of Surah Kahf when Dajjal is around, because that's the only protection you can have where you're safe from him. Now, only true believers are going to do that, and people haven't even got the time to even memorize a small surah of the Quran. What we should do is we should keep these ayats in memory, because the hadith says in Sahih Muslim, it says these are the protections we've got against Dajjal. And you can't do anything against Dajjal. Dajjal is, he's around, he's going to be around, he's going to come as a figure, and he's going to have huge powers on the earth. And when he's around, what can you do? Do you know what the Prophet ﷺ said, that when we're hungry, there's going to, his first day is like entire year. And the Sahaba were worried, how do we, and he spoke about how Dajjal's going to take away the food. He's going to just point out to the sky. However he does this, right? And it stops raining. There's no sunshine on this land, and the crops all die, the livestock all dies, and we haven't got any food for a year. For a year, my friend, people can't give up. People can't be bothered to go through the whole of Ramadan and fast. And people, even if they do fast, people can't give up with this flavored food and that flavored food. Do you know, Sahaba was so worried at that time. They said, how do we live? How do we eat? And the Prophet ﷺ said at that time that your sustenance is going to be your subhanallah, your alhamdulillah, your tasbih. It's going to be you praising Allah Azza wa Jalla. That's going to keep you alive. Now that's pure belief. Anyone who's got the belief and they're grounded before the Dajjal comes, then there's a big salvation coming their way. I just want to say that please, after listening to this, because this is not a full thing on Dajjal. I want to do a series, inshallah. I'll probably do it in the future on these signs and so on, about Dajjal in depth and so on. But just for now, what I want to say is, if you've listened to all of this, what is it that we should do? What we should do is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in hadith, which is Badiru bil a'mal. He said, be quick to do your actions. The whole point of all of this, look, Qiyamah is coming, Day of Judgment is coming. When Dajjal comes, there's going to be so much fitna and tribulation around. People are going to say, oh my God, how do I even pray? How do I even get away with trying to get on with my religion? And how do we do this? This is going to be a massive fitna. Right now we're feeling the masjids that are closed right now. We're feeling it, right? You haven't even got no tarawih, no masjids, no open, no masjids open, no Jum'ah and so on. We're feeling it. Can you imagine Dajjal's time, people are not going to be able to be free with their ibadah. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, be quick in doing your actions and ground yourself before Dajjal comes. That's the whole point. So if you've listened to what I've said, then the thing is, look, we've got to increase our amal. We've got to increase our